Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to the Moving Iron podcast. I've got Greg Peterson back on here to talk about what's going on in the world of equipment and auctions and those kind of fun things. Greg, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Casey?
Doing good, man. So you're on the road again, huh?
I am. I'm on the road a lot this week. I was speaking Monday in Champaign, Illinois at the the Illinois Soybean Association. I think they call it their Soybean Summit. That was big fun, catching up with folks there, Central Illinois. And then I was off to Northwest Ohio, did some auction previews, a couple really interesting sales coming up there. We'll have some video coming out on Machine Repeat YouTube and social media. And then I caught a flight out of Fort Wayne down to Jackson, Mississippi, and now we are today, later this morning, we'll be filming in Hollandale, Mississippi, farm retirement auction for a very well-connected farmer. He's been on the rice board for quite a long time. Great guy. And sales by Mid-Delta Auction, great auction company. They're celebrating their 20th anniversary. So it is a little wet down here, Casey. It rains 7 inches the last 2 days. So it's going to be I might be a little muddy when I hop my plane out of Jackson back to Minnesota tonight.
Yeah, just a little bit of rain then, not too much, right?
Just a little bit of rain. This will test one of my Machine Repeat theories from 35 years that adverse weather, sale day or leading up to it, particularly on sale day, tends to equate to hot bidding. I'm sure you've seen that over the years when it's like shared pain. Everyone's like, oh, man, it is so cold out here. I might as well bid one more time, and then the neighbor does, everyone does that and winds up selling higher. So I always tell people when they freak out, oh, Pete, it's going to be cold or rainy on our sale day. And I'm like, hey, you should be thanking your lucky stars.
You ever going to to an auction up in, I think it was Rochester, when SEMA when they having business still, and it was brutally cold that day. And all the stuff I walked around and watched the sell, everything brought at or more than what I figured it was going to bring. So
I remember that day. I believe that was like last few days of December 2016, I think.
Yep, it was 2016. Yep.
And they had a little ice rink. That was my home, much where I live in Rochester, and they have an ice rink at Graham Marina where they had the Sullivan Auctioneers had that sale, and we were filming it for our TV show. So I was trying to convey a sense of Minnesotaness to the audience. So my daughter happened to be home for Christmas, so she brought her dog out, and I remember filming on the ice by the hockey net. But yeah, that was wind blowing and cold. It
was brutal that day, man.
That was cold. The other thing I remember about that day, Casey, is they had a little dinner the night before, I think. Yep. And after the dinner finished up, I got up to leave, and a guy came up to me, and he had a floor length raccoon coat on and a big cowboy hat. And we don't see a lot of cowboy hats in Minnesota. So I'm like, oh, this could be interesting. And it turns out the guy, he was the son of a former deer dealer up in Lake City, Minnesota, about 30 miles away. And he wanted to talk to me about a sale he was going to have. And he had a 4440. Sullivan's wound up having the sale. He was April of 19. And it had like 1,900 hours on it. So, but he had a floor length coonskin coat. And then on the auction, he had one of those old International Harvester freezers that you see. Usually you see the big, massive, heavy kind of horizontal ones. This one was like a vertical one.
Yep.
And when they sold it, I remember Luke Sullivan standing there. It was April in Minnesota, so, of course it was snowing that day. And again, bad weather, hot bidding, but I have the picture of Luke selling an International Harvester freezer in my head. That was a good day.
Yeah, you see a few of those pop up from time to time when you're out there on the.
There's actually a farm machinery connotation there besides just the IH part of it. Is whenever I talk to people about those things, what's the one thing they say about them? They still work.
Yeah.
So they're 75, 80 years old, and they'll just work forever. Now, if you got to move it out of your basement, you need 10 forklifts to get it out. But
right.
And then the folks who usually have it will say, I wish, not to gripe, but I wish my combine or I wish my tractor would work for 70 years like that.
Right. Yeah, I had so my son mows lawns, and one of the guys' lawns he mows is a works for the Case dealership there in town, Case IH dealership there in town, and he's like 90 years old, and he's been doing it forever. And every time I go by, check on my son how he's doing. Of course, we chew the fat, talk about what's going on in the market, those kind of things. And he talking to me about when he first started selling for Case before it was Case IH. One of the things he would sell were creamery, creamery.
Oh, right.
He said that's how he made his living the first couple of years on the dot. That's the only thing he could sell. And
he was rocking the creamer sales out there, huh?
He was banging them out. But yeah,
I wonder what the margin was on those back then.
He said they would sell, every farm had one, so he would just go around every farm and just either give them an extra one or update the one they had or whatever it was. But he would sold the hell out of them. So that's what.
Yeah, I know. As I'm sitting down here in Mississippi today and traveling around, it's been the fun of it over the years. And you've been all over too, KCC, different areas, different geographies. You have the histories, and you spend a day or two talking to people, and it might be on the dairy side, it might be on the livestock or whatever, but some of the older equipment. In fact, the guy who's selling today, he was telling me, this is the problem when you talk to too many people on a trip for a week, but there was some particular livestock equipment that was made right here. And, people here, it's in their shared past. But people back in the Midwest, they've seen it. And so to run across where it comes from and the people, that maybe had a dad that worked at the plant or something, is always fun.
Yeah, that's always good stories. Always good stories. Well, I'm at the National Farm Machinery Show this week. Going to go around and see some people and visit. I've been here, 2 or 3 times other than this, but it's a good thing that this one's the largest indoor farm machinery show this week.
Is it chilly there today?
Rainy and cold today here in Louisville. So it's
well, I hope you brought your walking shoes. What is it, 5, 6? It takes a long time to hoof that thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember what it is. I think it's 5 acres, I think, or something like that under the roof or something crazy like that. But
I'll be out and standing in the mud today at the auction in Mississippi. This will be the first time in 15 years I haven't been in Louisville. So shout out to everyone. Hope you have a great time there. And say hi to everyone for me today.
I will definitely do that. So, well, Greg, it's that time of the year where you start looking at hay production and those kind of things, and those kind of hay equipment, those kind of things start coming to mind. One thing was when I was a used equipment guy, that would really start popping in my head was how many forage harvesters we had, and when we started moving those through. And this was the time of the year that I kind of started putting those on people's radar, because out where I'm at in the Panhandle, Nebraska, your first cutting of hay usually starts right around May 1st. So you start putting up haylage and those kind of things as that starts pouring through, and watching the custom guys start making their way through the area. So I guess one of the things I can only say about the forage harvest thing is completely feast or famine, right? No, there's no steady business, it feels like, on the used side. And as I look at what's going on right now in the forage harvester thing, I kind of get that feel like you have to have really, really high milk prices or a drought somewhere to kind of make that forage harvester move. And we don't really have either one of those right now. Milk prices are still good, but it's not gangbusters by any means. And it feels like the supply and demand of forage harvesters is just kind of there. It's kind of bounced along. As you look at your supply and demand stuff, Pete, what are you seeing?
Yeah, a couple of things. So at machinerypete.com, right behind the scenes, we do track, supply of listings by category, also by actual individual model numbers. And just exactly like you said, Casey, with self-propelled forage choppers over the years, I mean, there's just doesn't tend to be big swings unless you get those conditions you just identified. So right now, when I look at the supply, it's just kind of there. And the demand, of course, we track that too, and we're very appreciative. Everyone shopping at machinerypete.com with our listings. And again, outside of those conditions you present, there's not a lot of spike in activity. I would say, in generally speaking, and this is, when you cover all types of equipment like we have for 35 years, it's hard. I don't like to generalize too much, but 2024, I thought was a real good year, particularly for the smaller hay equipment. Round balers, we saw some very strong hard cash auction pricing. And when we do look at supply and demand there and some of those other categories, round balers and stuff, a little, you can tell why the auction pricing was a little stronger. I remember there was a week, I'm trying to remember. I think one sale was in like Southern Virginia, Northern North Carolina. Jason Acock with Jason Acock Auctioneering had a sale where he sold a New Holland. I think it was a roll belt 560. It was like new, but got, I don't know if it was 54,000 bucks. And then 2 days later, we saw one go for just over 56. I think that was back in August, something like that. So, more recently, just this week when I was traveling, I did see, this might make people smile, but it was an older John Deere 336, little square baler, of course, classic. And it looked nice. It didn't look like, museum ready or anything, but I think it went for like 5250.
Yeah.
And I think I looked at our, auction data at machinerypete.com, and actually I've seen some up around high fives and low sixes. So, there again, I suppose what's a new one costs. So when you see a decent 336, I guess not surprising they sell that strong.
Yeah. It's amazing how expensive a baler has gotten over the years. I was just playing with some stuff, this time last year, looking at some things, and it was, you're looking at $65,000 for a new baler. You're looking at, 150,000, 175,000, 180,000 for a big square baler, and even up, depending on what you got on it, those kind of things. So,
well, you guys, you're out there in that western Nebraska, that Panhandle. You get some interesting, like those haystack wagons. Those were like Stingers.
Stingers, yeah.
Yeah, those are always fun to show up at auction. Did you ever run across out there, Casey, many of those old self-propelled New Holland bale wagons? Those are always fun to see.
You see a few of those out there. I think so. That stuff is so geared towards small squares that you just don't see much of that anymore. Where we're at, but you see a lot of Stingers running around out there. Kind of
they sell, when we do see those sell at auction. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Like, is there a model like 6500? I think a Stinger 65.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when they show up at auction, because you don't see them every day, you tend to get, and of course with the internet now, people, you out your way, out west, or my way, in the upper Midwest, whatever, they're on it, and it seems like they sell pretty well. So it's fun to see them.
Yep. Yeah, I did come across the other day. I spent a summer on one, a Heston hay monster, and it was
Wait. You spent the summer on one? We need to hear more about this. Okay, give us the scoop.
So I was, 15 or whatever I was, trying to get my money for my first car, and if you're a big kid that could throw a hay bale around, there's always someone that'll hire you, right? So
yeah,
I spent the summer doing that, and I was on the hay monster, and I saw one driving out, going to a customer's place about 3 years ago, and I saw one packed back in the woods, back in the tree line back there, and I stopped and got out and looked at it, like, wow,
awesome. Now, did it make you want to start cussing when you saw it? Like, oh, those memories, or bring a smile to your face? Like,
I didn't
being a kid.
Good. I kept as far away from it as I could, but it was cool. See, I'd seen one of those since I was a teenager, so it was cool.
Yeah. Tossing bales around. I know you were high school football and college football, Casey. I forget, were you offense or defensive lineman? Were you
I was a guard, offensive guard.
Guard. Okay, so probably no better prep anywhere doing anything than chucking bales around, huh?
Yeah, it was. It kept you in shape for sure. And you had to perfect your hankling form with the bells to get them up there. So yeah, it was good. It was a good 8-hour workout, and I enjoyed all of it.
And I'm sure it was nice, cool, crisp, 65 degrees when you were doing that work.
Every day. Really wanted to enjoy life, go up in the and wait for that to happen. So yeah.
35 years traveling the country, Casey, we're talking to people that run ag businesses, and if they could identify one trait, if they could find people who did what you did, stacking hay when they were a kid, then they know that young guy or gal knows how to work. So I always tell young kids, put that at the top of your resume. I don't care all your chops, your math and science or whatever, just put that you've stacked hay.
Yeah.
And then they're going to go, you're hired. Machinery Pete company will hire you. Farm Journal will hire you. Just put that at the top of your resume.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the hay, hauling hay was a life lesson that I only did it for one summer because I found something that I had to work half as hard at and got paid twice as much. So I figured that was a better deal.
You're a wise man, Casey, that you were when you were younger, you still are. So that's, but that's character building stuff there. And, I did run across probably the most interesting hay piece of equipment I've run across recently. I think it was I didn't even really know there was one. It was a John Deere. They called it a number 8. And it made these high density mini bales. It was either an 8 or a 10. I can't remember the model number. But we saw one at auction in Wisconsin, and it sold for pretty decent money. And I think the guy that bought it reached out to me, and he said what he did. He had a market. So he was on the edge of a metro area. I think it was St. Cloud, Minnesota, which is probably about like the 4th biggest city in Minnesota. So he buys his baler, and he makes these little bales, and you can fall over with what you can charge for them at Walmart for people that want to throw it on their front doorstep in Rochester, Minneapolis, or whatever. So, find your niche market, and then your problem is you just got to find one of those old John Deere high density mini balers, and then you're in business.
Yeah. When your travels here at all this last year, this year so far, last year, whatever, have you seen many of those the pull type 3-row Forage harvesters out there at all? Have you ran across any of those on sales at all?
Oh, you see them, but not. It's getting to be more rare. It's always I love, and people they don't tease me, but if it's an old picker, a new idea picker, or an old chopper like that, I like to stop and give them their due, and if I can, grab a picture and throw it on our social media. One of the most fun YouTube videos I've ever done. This was back. I started YouTube in August of 2009, so 15 plus years now, but. Just down south of me in Iowa, in Garner, Iowa, I had heard, I think it was like part of a county fair or something. The family was called Schmitz Brothers. But back in the day, they had taken a couple farmalls. I want to say they were F30s or F30s. And I don't know how they do it. They engineered, you kind of make 2 tractors out of one. Basically, you were making your own 4-wheel drive tractor before there were 4-wheel drive tractors. And then they were custom forage guys. So they were traveling all over northern Iowa, which, there was no internet back then, probably 4 digits on your phone number or whatever. But the Schmitz brothers. And so they had this rig sitting up, and I went down to do a video. It was a little windy that day, so audio and the video is a little loud, but it's still out there on YouTube. And we talked to the guy that I think he ran it. And again, farmer ingenuity over the decades to figure out a better way. So making your own, they made their own self-propelled forage harvester before there were any.
Yeah.
So pretty cool to see that. And when we do see them at auction, they make me smile, those old ones.
Yep. Yeah, but it's unique. I sold a couple of those over the years as they've kind of come through, and it was I kind of equated those to like a pull type sprayer, for example. That I had gotten big enough to where the pull type sprayer didn't make sense anymore, and they went and found a used sprayer, something like that. Same deal with that. The gentleman that was using those pull type, he had 2 of them, and finally got to where he could afford to get one self-propelled to take care of that situation. But I kind of like what you said, I haven't seen that many of them pop up over the last 5 years.
That does remind me of a story, Casey. So I'm in Mississippi today, but about a week and a half ago, we were in Seven Springs, North Carolina. So it's kind of in the northeast part of the state. Really some good dirt there. They grow sweet potatoes and wheat and kind of corn, soybeans, everything. But the sale was fantastic. Prices were super high. And it was an older farmer, and unfortunately his son had passed just suddenly last Thanksgiving. He's had a heart attack. And they had a 4730 Deere sprayer on the sale. Nice rig. I think it was a 13 model, 3,334 hours. And I could tell Jason Aycock was the auctioneer. It was like, man, this sprayer is getting tons of interest. And talking to the retiring farmer, he said his late son, this sprayer was just his favorite sprayer. Now, a big part of that was because what they were coming from. Down in tobacco country there, those old John Deere like 6100s and stuff. And they had but they didn't have that. It was more of a jerry rig kind of thing. So they said when they got this 4730, his son, it was just his baby. And the thing sold for $104,000 with 3,300 hours on it. I think that was the third highest auction price I'd ever seen on a 4730 over 3,000 hours, which was cool. But on the sprayer itself, for his son's funeral, and after the town, of course, like where you are, rural, small town, rural, right? We take care of our own. And they had a fundraising event for his son. and they had a sticker made, and they had a sticker on each side of the front of the 4730. So when we were filming it for the TV show, we had to, of course, zoom in on the sticker there and honor the son. But those upgrades, whether it's from an older chopper to a newer chopper, an older sprayer to a newer, the farm families that, and as you were on the dealer side too, though, those are big jumps for farm families, big investments that help pull them forward, make them better and faster. So it's really fun to hear those stories.
Yeah. Yeah, those are neat when you see what the kind of the story behind the story thing, and it's always been a really cool thing to be a part of. Well, Greg, I guess as you look around today, any big moments for you as you take a look at the auction you see today? Any big things stand out to you?
Well, I think it as early February has played out here, Casey, we are actually starting to see a little bit strengthening on some of these auction prices. I don't, if it's, I've been all over here the past, 2 months. I think a general attitude is more hopeful with politically what transpired. But, and the pricing is stronger. I mean, just last Friday, as we were talking, so 6 days ago, we had an auction out in Northeast. Some great auctions out in New York, and they had a Magnum. I think it was a 13 model 290 with low hour, only 1,320 hours on it, where it went for 167, which, pretty strong hard cash price there. But what was interesting when he pulled the data apart was that the only 6 higher sale auction prices ever on a Magnum 290 came from March. It was March of 22 to December of 23, which if we threw a lasso around the top of the used equipment market, I think that's what you're going to see is that down the stretch 22, maybe early 23. So again, but coming in at 167, I thought was pretty good. And that sale again was just last Friday out in New York. So other than that, I am watching a couple big sales coming up. We just did a preview. I haven't got the video out yet, but sale coming up March 22nd. It's in West Unity, Ohio, kind of the northwest part of the state. Really, really sharp equipment on that sale. And this is the first time I've ever heard this before, Casey. But again, I was interviewing Lynn. I'm trying to remember her last name. Burer, I think. Sales by A.A. Brown Auction Service. Check it out, folks, March 22nd. But her late husband, David, was a John Deere guy to the core. By the way, it's the third straight auction I've been to where they've said, Pete, we're John Deere tractors and equipment, and we're Chevy trucks. And so take that data for what it's worth. But they had a 2016 John Deere S660 that they did the Gold Key Tour on.
Oh, really?
And so I was talking to Lynn. Lynn was just fantastic. Talking about David, her late husband, and then the guys with A. Brown. And I was saying, when it's a Gold Key item, you got to make sure to put that at the top of the listing, because that that always, to me, our auction data would show those items sell a little bit higher. A lot of people say, it doesn't make a difference. Doesn't it? Well, yeah, it does, because it speaks to the pride of ownership, right?
Right.
So I was talking to Lynn, and Lynn kind of smiled. She goes, Pete, I can't show you the Gold Key. And I was like, well, that's fine. I don't need to see the Gold Key. Just say it's Gold Key. But she said it actually went in the casket with David when he was buried. Oh, that's the level. That's how much he loved John Deere, and that's how much of a part of his life it was. And Lynn's father had a Gold Key John Deere 8210 that's also selling on the auction. She was beautiful. And she described right before he passed, Lynn's their son Nathan. I think it was Nathan. Apologize if I get the name wrong. Too many names bumping around in my head, but he went over to check on his grandpa. And his grandpa was very frail, but they had a New Holland, I think a 92, 82 four-wheel drive, and he had it parked over there. And when Nathan got over there, his grandpa had crawled up in and started driving it. And it was planting season, and he was planting, and Nathan said, there's no auto steer. He goes, his lines were so straight. It was unbelievable. But he said he was so frail, he had to rest him on his shoulder, getting him down out of the cab. So again, that tractor selling, the S660, So that's why I like to do these previews because, it's a John Deere S660, but it was David's S660. And again, he's resting with the gold key. So, that to me, that says a lot, and it's fun to share those stories like that. So I think that's going to be a hot sale on March 22nd.
Right on. Okay. Well, Greg's probably a good place to stop. What's the easiest way folks want to reach out to you? What's the easiest way to do that other than just Googling your name and coming up with Machinery Pete?
Yeah, just go to our website, machinerypete.com. Then down at the bottom, there's a little link. And if you click the email, that goes into our office. And we have really great people, Machinery Pete office, Ann Stitt, Dan Cabazzo. They'll take your emails and just send a note, say, hey, I got a question for Pete or whatever. And they funnel that right to me. It gets through really quick. So, again, we just thank everyone for their support of what we're doing. And wherever we are, hopefully I'll be in your neck of the woods soon.
Right on. Okay. Well, Greg, appreciate you being on the podcast, man. Stay dry today and try not to get stuck out there in the parking lot.
All right. And you have fun walking those halls. And, hey, have that pork sandwich for me at the show. That's a must.
You don't skip that one. That's the best part of it. Right on. Okay. Well, we have Aaron Fennell and Adam Werner from Elite Ag coming up to talk about what's going on in the world of forage harvest and what that looks like. But before we do that, we're going to do the Moving Iron Podcast Market Minute with Chip Nellinger. So that'll be up next. So stay tuned. All right, back from the break. Got Chip Nellinger here from Blue Reef Agri-Market to talk about what's going on in the commodity market. Chip, how you doing, bud?
Doing good. How you doing, Casey?
Doing well, man. Doing well. We had the WASDE report come out, and not a lot of fireworks there, but it's hard to tell if the market slid because of the report or just it was the odd day of the week that it needed to go down, 10 cents so I can come back up 10 cents tomorrow, I guess. So I guess what's your thoughts on the WASDE report and how things fell out there?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen. We basically easy to kind of give an overview of the WASDE report. Everything unchanged on domestic carryout, so no changes whatsoever. Corn, beans, wheat. The market was maybe expecting a little bit of a cut in corn. They didn't get it. World numbers as far as carryout goes actually should have been a little bit supportive, honestly. Corn and bean carryout cut from the world perspective, 3 or 4 million tons below the lowest estimate in the case of beans, by about a 1 million ton cut in wheat world carryout. And the world numbers, probably what most people were watching, were the world production numbers, particularly South America. We saw cuts in the Argentine corn and bean crops. Small cuts expected, 3 million tons in the beans. Brazil beans left unchanged at 169. You've had a couple of different private forecasts out within the last week that were well over 170. In fact, I believe it was this morning, Dr. Cordonier pegged Brazil at 171. So that was in line with expectations. Market sold off a little bit, to your point. Again, we've kind of gone for a week or more, kind of grinding sideways without making new highs. The deferreds in corn made new highs today, particularly new crop December. The front month of March was not able to make a new high. It's a little bit of a warning flag that, at face value, this should have been a friendly report with cuts in South America and world carryout cuts. But we had a little bit of a negative reaction. So to me, the market's acting tired in the case of corn and beans. We've gone a week or better without new, fresh highs. The funds have kind of a stale, long position that's starting to build, and we're within shouting distance of the end of the month coming up here pretty quickly. So I think the stage is set for a deeper correction than what we've seen for quite a while, and then it becomes about how fast does the Brazil crop advance as far as harvest pace. How big is that Brazil bean crop really going to be in the end result? That's still out ahead of us a ways, Casey.
Yeah. All right. So we've seen over the last,
pretty much since the election, as you watch the markets go back and forth, especially the grain markets, you'll see, basically a 5 to 7 cent run, right? So you'll see them go through, they'll kind of break through a technical point. And right now, I think we're like 493, I think, kind of in that area is where the last high was. And it'll get up to that point, and you'll see it sell off. Then it'll get back up to that point and sell off. Back to your point about, trading sideways, we're not really fitting in new highs. I guess as you look at this, Chip, as you look at the bean market, let's start with that one first. Huge crop in Brazil. I mean, that's going to be what it is. Even if they discount it a little bit from what they've talked about doing, it's still going to be a massive crop.
I guess as you watch what's going on with soybeans and with bean and corn both, as you watch these two markets right now, what's it going to take to get corn to break through, to get to that $5 mark everybody keeps looking for? And then as you watch what's coming on the backside here with the soybean harvest, it's going to put a lot of pressure on soybeans as well as, and also corn will fall along with that. But as you're watching those two things, you kind of have a tale of two tapes here. You got slow supply over here on the corn side everyone's kind of worried about, but you see a massive world supply coming on the backside here at soybeans. So I guess as you look at that, what are your thoughts there, and how do you see those two playing out?
Yeah, I think there's two opposing forces. There's been a lot of money flow, funds bringing in a lot of money off the sidelines to get long this market in corn and beans, corn especially. They're up getting knocked on the door of 370,000 contracts that they're long in corn. One of the top 4 or 5 largest long positions they've ever had in corn. They've kind of shrugged off some bearish news, right? And we've had tariff announcements. We've had some different, news stories out. We've, seen that South American second crop corn harvest start to advance a little better than it has been. And the market shrugged that off. But I think, to your point, we haven't made new highs. We haven't been able to clear $5 in the front month March corn contract. And it just seems to me like it's getting a little bit stale, where the market needs some fresh bullish news to get through it. It could be in the form down the road of some sort of a threat to the second crop corn in Brazil. But that's likely down the road a little ways here, assuming they get kind of caught up to a normal harvest pace. In the case of beans, same thing. We've shrugged off this massive Brazilian crop. It hasn't really mattered. We had tariff news. We've had different news stories out that have come on the bearish side, and the market just shrugs it off and rallies. But I think in the case of beans, as that harvest pace picks up, they got a 2-week window that's wide open, and they can really get some harvest done in a hurry in the Southern Hemisphere. Their farmers are no different than our farmers here in the United States. And so I think we were almost kind of coming to that reckoning where, hey, any way you cut it, whether it's a 168, 169 crop, or if it ends up being 173, 174, like some private estimates, it is a massive crop in Brazil. It's going to be well north of 6 billion bushels. And it's almost like the market can't ignore it anymore. We're about to get smacked in the face of this big wall of supply out of Brazil. They don't have as much storage as we do. They're going to get that moved out of the field right at harvest time, and it's going to hit the world market. They're already $1.10 to $1.20 cheaper than we are at the U.S. Gulf. So to me, that's the biggest elephant in the room, so to speak, is this massive Brazilian bean harvest. Yes, Argentina got shaved back a little bit. That was expected by the market. But all told, this year compared to last year, the Southern Hemisphere is going to harvest somewhere in the tune of 500 million bushels more beans than they did 1 year ago because of the drought down there.
Yep. Okay. All right. Let's jump over and talk about the cattle market here, because the cattle market's been one of those where every time we think that the bottom is going to fall out of the cattle market, it just jumps up another notch, right? And we saw a little bit of the slide today with the report that came out. We saw a slide, I think it was close to, $13, $14, something like that. But I guess but again, it's not uncommon to see a slide like that, and then the next day it all comes back again. So I guess as you're looking at the cattle market, herd size is still low, still the lowest it's ever been. Every time they come out with a herd an estimate, it's lower than it was the time before. So I guess, Shep, as you're watching this cattle market, what are your thoughts there, and where do you see this thing going?
Yeah, probably haven't seen the end of the volatility. I think we're going to have continuing massive volatility. It was a quick $9 run. Took less than 10 days to make the final $9 run higher. And just as it looked the most bullish, we broke this market about $12 in the case of the April contract off the highs in about 2 weeks. So I think that the volatility is still going to stay. Could we go lower? Absolutely. 2 weeks away from the end of the month. The funds had, at least at one point here 2 weeks ago, a record long position built up in live cattle and feeder cattle. But the cash market has been slow to come down. It has broken off the highs, but it's still at a healthy premium to where the futures market is. We're in the first notice day on the February. That's likely part of the liquidation and the break that we've seen, or at least some of the reasoning behind it. And those futures trade to the end of the month. and they're a big discount to where the cash is. So if cash can hold together for a week or 10 days here, you could see a snapback as the February contract kind of catches back up to where this cash market's going to be. So I'd expect massive volatility continuing in the cattle complex. To your point, we haven't changed anything, but oftentimes markets top on the most bullish news and bottom on the most bearish news. That condition could kind of continue for a while, obviously, because it takes a long time to build the cattle herd up, and we haven't fixed any of the problems yet. But we may have traded it already. So I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see some sort of a halfway rally back, $6-8 rally in the futures. I think there's probably a strong probability the top is in, but I think you could see continuing $8 to $15 swings up and down in this cattle market going forward. I don't think the volatility is going to slow down anytime soon.
Right on. Okay. Chip, appreciate you being the podcast. If folks want to reach out to Billy Reef, what's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, easiest way is just call our main office in Morton, Illinois. It's 309-550-7213. We'd love to chat with you.
Right on. Stay tuned. Take a quick break here. Aaron Fennell and I will be back to talk about what's going on in the Forage harvester market. We're going to be heading south to do that, so stay tuned. All right, we're back here. I got Aaron Fennell back on to talk about what's going on in the chopper market, and I could not do it without having my most southern chopper dealer that I know, Adam Werner, come on top about what's happening in the marketplace. Guys, how you doing?
Good. Doing good, Case.
Doing good, man. So Adam, did you guys what's a snow shovel look like in the South that hadn't been used for 20 years?
Just the same old square, flat grain shovel. That's it. It's close. That's about as close as we've got,
Yeah. So you were down in that area that gets snow about every third decade, it feels like. And you got 6 or 8 inches of it. How'd that fare for you guys?
Oh, man, the kids had a blast. It was just right after Martin Luther King Day was on Monday.
Yeah.
And so then the kids were supposed to go back to school on Tuesday, but there was a threat of the weather. Mm-hmm. And so they just went ahead and canceled school for Tuesday and Wednesday. And then they were like, might as well just cancel the whole week. So then they were out for the whole week.
Yeah.
Blamed it on the dirt roads, and that we got dirt roads that the buses have to go down, and that was their excuse at least.
No.
Nowhere else in the West had dirt roads that the school buses have to go up and down with signs.
It's 4-lane asphalt out here. How long did it stick around? I heard some guys saying like 2 days.
So it snowed on Wednesday, and we were headed to a little cow show on Saturday morning, and in the shade, there was still snow hanging around Saturday morning. I mean, it was still to like 22 or 24 for us that Saturday morning. So that's a cold sucker here in South Georgia.
No, for sure.
Yeah. But it was 80 last week. So, we're back growing grass, and my cows panting and thinking they're about to die because they got their winter coat on them from the snowmageddon.
Yep. It was
now imagine you get that same snow in October and you go outside in March and it's still there.
It's still there.
That was my Minnesota days. Right. Well, like when I lived up there near Grand Forks, like we got cows in October 1st. Like they come home October 1st, and I'm like, why the heck are we doing this? And they were like, just cause it could happen, and then we turned cows out one year to grazing on permanent pasture like May 20th or something like that, and we fed them that long. And I just scratching my head. I'm like, man, we graze from March, February to November, and we feed for November, December, January, and we're wrapping up in February. My cows are already backing off eating baleage and dry hay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not grazing. So.
Yep. So that time of the year for everybody but the South is coming up here. We got, haylage is not that far away. Right? So typically
chopping in South Florida. Yeah. We were chopping last week oats and ryegrass at a dairy in Okeechobee, or a couple dairies in Okeechobee. So winter annuals. Now they do chop their stargrass and Hamathia. They chop that 300 days a year. They'll slow down their December, January, that perennial stuff. But they were chopping some really, really nice oat. I was down there last week. Some really nice oats and ryegrass last week.
Yep. So Adam, real quick, I guess go introduce yourself and then your lead ag, what you're doing, kind of what you're doing, where you're at.
Yeah, so Adam Werner, partner in Elite Ag LLC. We're out of Leesburg, Georgia, so in Southwest Georgia. We're an AGCO Massey Ferguson dealer. On the chopper side of things, we're Krone, and then we kind of dabble in everything, dealing with the commercial dairy business, beef cows, and commercial hay business. But so, I mean, everything from push tractors and blades to semi-trailers and everything that goes along with it. We kind of try to be a one-stop shop for our bigger dairies down here along the way. And we wind up covering. So our market's not huge in terms of volume and number of units. So we wind up covering 3-4 states. So I've got choppers as far away that we service as far away as Mississippi, in the hills in North Carolina, and then all the way to Okeechobee, which the hills in North Carolina are actually closer than Okeechobee. So, believe it or not, even though Florida's only one state away, but just Florida's a big joker when you get to traveling down through there. So.
It's not very wide, but sure is long, right? So that's the way that works. So Aaron, we was here last week, but Aaron with 21st Century Equipment, one of the things that he does part on the internet side selling stuff, he sells a lot of used choppers out there too. So I wanted to get him back on here to give his expertise as to what's happened. So one thing about choppers, it's absolutely feast or absolutely famine on them. Like there's no
doubt.
It's not like something where there's a season, right, where you're going to go out and do some stuff. And it seems like when crops are really, really good and dairy prices are high, you can see some choppers move. Or if there's a drought someplace, you see a chopper move because they can go and chop that stuff down. I guess, Ad, we'll start with you first. As you look what's going on in the South, had a pretty wet year last year down south. You had a lot of rain, a lot of stuff like that. You guys get multiple cuttings a year, so I don't know how. What do you got, like 10 cuttings of alfalfa a year? Or stuff?
Good. 7 to 8. 7 to 8.
All right, just slightly less in the desert that's irrigated. So it's one of those things where the haylage side of it, the earlage side, and then silage side of all that stuff goes together to make some kind of a feed ration for whatever it's doing. Talk a little bit about what you see happening in your area, in the areas that you cover, and what you see happening in the market overall.
Yeah, Casey, we've seen it for the last couple of years on our winter annual. So we're basically we have a chance to plant 3 full season crops, let's call it. And our winter annuals, say 10 years ago, 8 years ago, ryegrass was probably our most popular crop because it put up the best feed. It made the best feed for the cows, and in terms of milk production. We've seen a trend change with the nutritionists. They're not necessarily worried about the quality. I don't know if this is commodity based, but they're not as much worried about the quality of the feed, so as far as a protein level and that sort of thing. And so we transition more into what can make the most tons. And so it's some wheat varieties, it's some oats and some trit, and as far as our winter annuals go. And then we'll have corn in the ground, in North Florida here in 2 weeks, first week of March. And then a lot of our dairies we'll even double crop corn. So when corn comes out in June, July, go right back in with another full season variety. And hopefully that comes out at the end of October, 1st of November. So that's kind of our gist on. Now, some of our dairies don't necessarily have enough acreage. They don't have to double crop their corn, but some of them, their dirt's not quite as good. So then they will, maybe they're only making 15 to 20 tons to the acre. So they'll just try to run it around twice. Our guys that's got some better acreage, that are 25 to 30 ton, then that maybe they'll only hit the corn once and they'll only grow 2 crops for that year.
Gotcha. Good.
So you guys are rolling it virtually everything but January.
Yeah, well, goal is for a dairy that's 10 miles north of us. They run about 10,000. They milk about 10,000, and they're in they own and harvest about 4,500 acres 3 times, and their goal is like 15 days, basically just say 2 weeks, but no more than 3 weeks dead, so nothing growing in between the crops. So 300, give or take 20 days a year, they want a quote unquote a seed in the ground. Let's say they want a seed in the ground doing, at least there 320 days out of 360.
Right.
Yeah. And you think about that. You just got to be right back. It doesn't leave much time for dirt work and fixing things and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So they do rotate some fields in and out, and all right, this one we harvested first, but we're going to plant it last and do some work in there. But that's their that one particular dairy's goal is 320 plus days a year of seed in the ground. So they can put manure on it and have something going.
That's crazy. Wow. That's that's wow. So I guess Adam, as you look at what's going on around the chopper world right now, what's your feel like overall health wise? Do you feel good about what the chopper market looks like? Do you feel like there's some bumps there? I mean, what's your thoughts right now?
For sure, Casey, we still got that old 1,000+ horsepower bump knot or hematoma that's been there for the last 8 years. That thing's not gone away. All our custom guys, and as our dairies are growing, we're finding more of our dairies going away from owning their own machines. Yeah, they may own one to do some light work, so they can't afford to have a custom cow come in there and do some light work. We've only got one of our larger dairies that owns machines, and he hires out all of his farming. Most of our other ones are hiring custom guys, so obviously they're coming in with the highest horsepower they can get, trying to cover the most acres they can. And then we've seen a big gap. We used to sell tons of 700 horsepower machines, and there was piles of Krone Big X 700s, Kloss 970s, 8600 deers or something along those lines. And we've seen kind of that market, the 700-800 horsepower, go away, and more the small machines. So guys, we've had a lot of beef cow guys that hasn't been very popular for us. They've trended towards, since fertilizer is so expensive and hay equipment costs so much, they've actually gone to putting up silage now for their beef cows. And so we've seen a little uptick in that 500 to 600 horsepower market, mainly on the used side. But we've had a few guys, like the guy in Mississippi I was telling you about. He bought a machine basically for himself and his neighbor. Now he's got 5 neighbors he's cutting for, and he's almost got like 1,400 acres to cut with a 600 horse machine. So he's going to make his payment and stuff like that, just cutting for all his neighbors. And we've seen a lot of that. So they're not necessarily, there are custom harvesters, I guess, but they're not out going everywhere custom. They're trying to stay close to home. So that's been something that's come about in the last 5 years for our big cow-calf group that we have. We don't have much for feedlots and some stockers, but we've seen that change for the small machines. And then, of course, on the custom side, everybody just bigger, bigger, bigger.
Yep. So, Aaron, that was the next question I was going to ask you. It feels like the trend line, there's still the huge, 1,000 horse machines and 900 horse machines, those kind of things like that. But it felt like there for a while, there was a trend that you were kind of sliding back to some smaller machines. A couple of reasons for that. I mean, there were some machines that came out that didn't have, depth and those kind of things.
Right.
Kind of put in that. But the flip side of that too was, like you just talked about, Adam, I'm going to, I got some custom guys that come in and I just need a little bit of machine to kind of do my, cleanup work, he said, or just if they can't get there in time, at least I can finish up a field, those kind of things. Aaron, what are you seeing on that side of that smaller chopper? Where you see that falling into the market right now?
Red hot.
Yeah.
If there is a chopper that is hot, it is, especially for us on the deer side, it's that 95, 96, 97, simply because of no depth. We've had guys that are, and we do, we have some big outfits that big feedlots that have their own, but out, the big dairies in Colorado, which there's quite a few, that is all for the most part custom. Some of the smaller ones do have their own machine. It's you're typically looking at that, 5 to 10 year old one for the guys that do have theirs, which is a nice flow, because you can you used to be able to take that one of those custom machines, move it down to that guy. Well, when you're in the horsepower chase, everybody gunning for 1,000. When you're in that chase, then you create all the monsters. Well, let's say we had 3 980s. Let's get 2 9900s. And everybody else does that, and then there's a bunch, and then where do we go? We got this huge gap. So that's when the smaller 9,000s come up, and we've honestly, guys, we've had custom guys going to those from the big ones. We had one guy that was a three big boys. and went down, went down to 49700s and tickled. Yeah, just tickled. So that, and as far as the used market and getting any attention, which is very important, those are by far not much discussion unless it's we have the big one for a reason and need another big one. Your guy that has a little flexibility, maybe the not the super mega custom guy, but the 2-3 machine guy. Those guys to the large, we have our own, are a big pocket for that. What like what you're calling the 700, 5 to 800 range, staying out of the big boys. So that's what we're seeing. And to your point, Casey, yeah, their choppers are feast or famine. In a drought, they're hot. I can remember the drought of 12, and if you had a 3-row head with the belt and chains on it, you sold it. It's the way it worked. We could use another one of those, but then those big machines on the lot, those where you don't have the pockets for those. It'd be interesting to see how that washes out in a drought year, because we were 13 years ago, the drought of 12, and there was a lot the scale of machines was so much different then.
Not even comparable, really.
Yeah, you're coming off, like on the deer side, you're coming off those would that be an 50 series into the 80 series? Yeah
80s.
Yeah. And as you watch that, so Adam, you brought up a good point there. Both of you guys kind of brought this point up, and this is another thing I was wanting to talk about. It was choppers. To me, it's not like combines where everything's just getting bigger, right? You know what I mean? Like, you go from a 6 series to a 7 series to 8 series, so on and so forth, and everyone just kind of keeps growing. It feels like on the chopper side of it that you have these swings, like everybody swings towards the biggest of the big, and then they realize, like, oh crap, this is all we got to sell now. We got new big ones and old big ones, then that's our choice, right?
Right.
And then it starts to kind of swing back, like we talked about here. We've kind of swinging back into that whole, smaller series machine as you work your way through that. But then it'll swing that way totally eventually, right? And then you'll have all that, and everyone's like, well, no, we don't have any used. I'd like to have a used, big one, and trying to figure your way through that. My career, as I've watched that ebb and flow through there, every dealership I've ever worked at on the chopper side has always been a big custom deal, right? They've had tons of custom cutters, hardly ever had any really quote unquote end users that they just sold to someone local. About you'd sell 7 or 8 or 5 or 6 or whatever to a custom guy. So you always had 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 of these used ones sitting out there that they all had the same sticker on the side, just they had out different hours, right? And that's really how it kind of worked. As you watch this stuff ebb and flow right now, it feels like the hunger for getting your own machine is getting to be a little bit bigger than it's been in the past, just because you talk to a lot of these custom guys and they run the same problem everybody else does, right? They want to get more acres, but they don't have the labor to go do it.
Correct.
Right? Same thing you run into. So it feels like the stage will be set for, hey, you know what? Smaller might be bigger or better because of where I'm at, what I'm doing. Adam, as you're talking to your customers, your local customers, not necessarily your custom guys that you work with, how many of them are saying, hey, I don't necessarily want to, if you come across one that's got 300 hours or 500 hours, I'm looking for something like that, but I don't want to buy the new one. Or how many guys you have that are looking for that new chopper that are a single end user type person? Are you feeling?
All of our lower horsepower machines are used buyers. We've got one dairy that bought a new one, and he doesn't put but 300, 400 hours on it a year. So he's going to be able to run that thing for a long time. They've got a great maintenance program with us and them, but all of our smaller guys are all used buyers. I mean, really, they would prefer buying a 500-hour machine, 800-hour machine, stuff like that, because they're going to be able to run that thing for 5-6 years in their mind.
Yep. So, Aaron, same thing to you. I mean, as you're looking at this, the
with the touch that you have out there on the internet and people that you're talking to, how many of those end users do you talk to that are on that? I want something that's lower houred, but not necessarily high houred, or I'm looking for that new one or something like that. Like what's that temperature feel like right now for you?
Typically, it's been my experience in the last, 15 years or so with chopper buyers. There is a big gap between kind of just what we were saying, guys. You have guys that want that late model low hour machine because they have the 3 to 5 year old big machine. So that the late model low houred in the chopper is always there, and pretty much I shouldn't say bright spot, but a stronger portion of that market. Where I see the biggest gaps in maybe, what I'd call the national market, which affects us too, is you get those machines over 1,000 and over 100,000. When you're in that ballpark, that's a big segment of the market, meaning you gotta, when you get your late model low hour guys, I feel like that make sure he doesn't get away.
Right. Yeah.
And then once you get under, I shouldn't say, I would say over 1,000 hours and over $200,000. Because that gets you, on the deer side, then you're talking, some higher houred 8,000s, your 80s, your 50s, that kind of thing. And you get into that realm, and it has a good flow to it. You can make deals, you can make money on the choppers. Things work. It's that, $1,500, $2,000 hour, $100,000 is something that's where things get sticky.
Yep. And that's the thing too. Is when you start looking at that, that's the other side of that, is that you run out of, especially on choppers, you run out of buyers.
Yeah.
Pretty quick, right? I mean, you got the 1-year-old guy that kind of runs it in their custom guy that bit, 700 hours, 1,000 hours a year on whatever it is they do. But as you start watching that tail off, when like you just talked about, Aaron, you go find someone that wants to buy a 3,500 hour chopper. They're just not. They're not in the continental United States for the most part.
Right. Well, and back to where you get into the older in the John Deere market, anyhow, you get into the 7s and 8s. That much to Adam's point, that is a lot of those go to a guy that has a custom guy show up, but either he hasn't got there in time, so we bought our own chopper this year, or we're going to help because rates keep going up because machines are $1 million or what have you. That seems to be the guy who has the custom but is helping is a good avenue for those lower budget machines. Just have it sitting there ready to go kind of scenario is what it sure seems like happens more often than not.
Yep, for sure. All right, last thing real quick as we wrap things up. Adam, as you look out across this year right now, what's your pre-sold chopper look like? You feel like you had a good run last year? You're going to have some good stuff there? Or do you feel like about like everything else where more than likely 25 orders for 26 delivery are going to really pick up from what you've seen in the past?
Yeah, I think we'll get, we're going to wind up with a few new higher horsepower machines moved this year in our market. Still, again, on the little side, we'll probably dabble at some lower horsepower ones from around. So that's kind of what we were predicting as far as our orders, and got one deal locked up and sold there at the end of the year. And just kind of got some feelers out. We've actually had some dairies change hands. So dairies have been profitable for down here in the Southeast, and actually had some new ownership come in and buy 2 big dairies from the upper Midwest. So, or I guess be Ohio Valley in that area is where they had some other dairies. So we've had some new ownership coming into the Southeast in our dairies. So that's going to be interesting because usually they have a different way of thinking than our guys that have been down here all along. So be interesting to see how they change things up from the way we've been doing it.
Yep, What's your thoughts, Aaron? You feel like there's some movement now, moving into 25, but 26 may be better. What's your thoughts?
On the new side, I think for us, it's going to be a lot of status quo. So much of our new chopper business is the multi-unit, the custom guys that we have talked about here. On the used side, it's funny that we're talking about this today because I've had chopper activity in December, January, and February like I've never, ever seen in 25 years. Typically, this is make sure the tires are aired up and it starts season for a chopper. But there are,
Right. Yeah,
and it's heads. It's late model big units. It's late model smaller units. It's the 10-year-old, 15-year-old rigs.
Right.
There's just a lot of activity on choppers now, like I've never seen this time of year.
We've got a couple older ones, 3,500-hour machines that we both have bites on, trying to get them through the shop now and get them so we can get a price on them, ready to pull into the field this spring for them. And, from Kentucky to South Alabama.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I was hoping would have a bigger impact, and I think the Deers are doing this, Krone is, and Kloss, is the playing with the horsepower from the manufacturer side of things. I had pretty high hopes for that we could buy lower horsepowered machines and then just pay for the horsepower when we needed it during corn season. Like that would come in pretty handy. But from what I've seen on the new side, like there's no advantage to buying the 200 horsepower less machine. The price difference isn't that much. You'll have it made up in 2 years in buying the horsepower. And I had hoped that would be a thing because I thought that would help down the road in terms of bringing that value down from $1 million, as Aaron said. Right. I'd hope we could buy an 800 and whatever horsepower machine. And during 30-ton corn season, when we go, these custom guys, when they go to their best corn, turn that thing up to 1,000 horsepower. And then when they go to the dry land feedlot guy out in the West that doesn't want kernel processor, no nothing to it, then go back down to normal horsepower for that and save a little bit of money. But my experience, on our machines that we've seen, there hasn't been enough price difference break between the 800 and 1,000. So you might as well just go ahead. They're going ahead with the big one. I wish I kind of hope they do that on little ones too, and make that available on the little ones. And I think that could be an advantage for these smaller guys we talked about.
To your point, though, too, Adam, if they have that switch there for that 1,000 horse, they're not shutting it off.
Just make the windrow bigger. Well, it's a sales pitch to save them money. That's what I'm trying.
Yeah, there you go.
You're trying. Always trying. All right, fellas, that's probably a good place to stop. Adam, if folks want to reach out to you, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah. You can find me on our website, eliteagco.com. All my contacts there. Find me on Twitter, Adam_Verner, all those other things. Okay. Anything we can do to help.
Right on. Aaron, how about you, buddy?
On Twitter by my name, @AaronFintel. Call me, text me, 308-760-1193.
Right on. Casey Seymour, you can find me on all those socials at Moving Iron Podcast. You can find me there, so check it out. See me up there. You can also you have to edit this part out because I was going to give him my phone number, but I feel like I want to do that yet. I don't feel that brave yet, so edit that part out. Let me start over here. So, all right, I'm Casey Seymour. You can check me out on all the socials at Moving Iron Podcast or Moving Iron. Check me out there, and you can find all that information there. Thanks for listening to this. We drop this every Thursday, so look forward to every Thursday when it comes out. Looking forward to that. So, Adam and Aaron, appreciate you guys being on.
You bet. Good to be here.
Glad to, Casey. Glad to be
on. So, with that, I am Casey Seymour. With that, I'm Verner, Aaron Finnell, Greg, Machine Year Pete Peterson, and Chip Nellinger. So, until next time, it's going to be smart, folks. Out.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.